So welcome everyone to the first part of our 6-part mindfulness series, sponsored locally here by Shark Ninja. This series is focusing in on resilience, mindfulness, mental well-being, and really looking to help destigmatize things that have been built up around mental health, both within and outside of our survivor community. So I'm excited to introduce once again, Jon introduced himself a little bit, but Jon Wortmann, who will be hosting and leading each one of these sessions. He's a coach, trainer, author, best-selling author. I believe you have 5 books, maybe more now since last time I updated this bio. Has done over 3,000 of these workshops focusing on resilience and communication. He also coaches golf at UConn and with the PGA, so that's a very cool fun fact for you. Our special guest this week, and we'll have a special guest for each part of this series, is Lisa Deck. She is a survivor, Go Red spokeswoman, stroke ambassador, and she also is the founder and director of Sisters at Heart, which focuses on connecting heart and stroke survivors. So we're really excited to have Lisa and Jon with us. And with that, Jon, I will turn it over to you to get us going.
Welcome, those of you at home. Welcome to Lisa. And the conversation we're about to have is about managing extreme emotion. And nothing's been more difficult for us during COVID than to experience the changes in our bodies and our brains. And what that does to our emotional lives is something that we actually have more power over than we realize. And this workshop today is going to be Lisa and I talking back and forth, first about what happens to the brain and emotions and the way it works. Then we're going to dig into a series of skills that you can use to make sure when extreme emotion starts to overwhelm you, you've either prepared for it, you know how to manage it in the moment, or you know how to recover a little bit more quickly. Lisa, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Jon. I'm thrilled to be here and a little nervous because I know we're digging deep, but I'm excited to go through it with you and share it with our viewers because I think it's going to be, it's already interesting. So thanks.
So let's start with a hot take. I work with professional athletes, and one of them is a female soccer player. And she was trying to make it onto her national team. And she was experiencing extreme fear. And it was literally causing her to freeze. So you've heard of the fight or flight response. The third response that happens when people experience extreme fear is they freeze, also known as choking. So you're an expert in recovery. You're an expert in overcoming difficult situations. What would you tell her? Oh, and by the way, we also have to remind people that you're also a mom. And so you're an expert in the extreme emotions of parenting and dealing with kids growing up. What would you tell this soccer player who is freezing on the pitch? And you're on mute right now.
There we go. Is that better?
Great.
So I guess my advice to her would be to take a second, breathe. I mean, those are the first things. And I guess my other advice would be visualization. I think about yourself out there. How can you go, tackle this fear you have and relive the times you've done it before and know that you can do it again. I think those are the pieces that I would think about.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why Lisa's here, because she already gave 2 of the best answers: to pause and reset, and to actually go into a tool like visualization to take over the brain's function rather than letting emotion overwhelm us. And the reason that you know that is because you've been through difficult things before. And most people don't realize that emotion actually has the ability to be experienced and switched from. It doesn't have to stick in our body and overwhelm us. But what's some bad advice that you think that soccer player got? Because when we deal with extreme emotion, most of the time people say a few things to us, and we have to get those out of the way today. We have to remind people this is not what you want to say to yourself or to others.
I'm not proud to admit it, but I think it's something I probably have told my kids. Oh, just get over it. Let's go. Come on. We got to do it. And for me, that's not because I'm careless or that I don't care about them, but it's, hey, we got to go. Come on, you can do this. Well, this is easy. You've done this before. Now, an Olympic athlete's a little bit different, but when I think about my children in certain situations, to them, that's how much it feels scary. And, but we're on a clock. We got to go. So I think real life kind of puts those out there as the advice you give.
So in your brain, you have two tiny little almond-shaped regions, technically called the amygdala. I call it the alarm in my writing and in my coaching. And if you tell the alarm that is like a toddler to just get over it, it will start screaming louder. If you tell the alarm, oh, you're fine, everything's okay, it's going to start screaming louder, and it's going to start spending the emotions that we're about to talk about and where they come from. If you say, rub some dirt on it. Now that works if you are in the military and you have an injury and you have to fight in a situation where there is great risk. You cannot tell your alarm system and the emotions that come with it that everything's okay. Because if it's not okay, it needs to be switched from, acknowledged and switched from. And what Lisa gave the soccer player as advice was pause and breathe. That's acknowledging that the emotion is in our body. And then switch to a tool or a skill like visualization to actually put yourself in a new place. Because in your brain, you have a billboard, and it's your mind. So your brain and itself and your body are sending signals to that billboard. And on that billboard will live emotions. And what we're going to teach you today is how you choose what stays on the billboard in your head. But to get that a little bit, we first have to talk about the different parts of your brain. So Lisa, what have you been taught about your brain before? What are the different parts of it structurally?
So I know more about the vessels in the brain, not necessarily the structure. I mean, I think that there's, the middle cerebral artery comes up and provides the vessels that go to all those other areas. There's the, emotion center, there's the talking center, there's the, kind of all of those different ones. I'm trying to think what other ones.
No, but what
there's
you
the
just
memory
brought up,
center.
the memory center, what you just brought up that most people don't realize is that blood flow is the key to our brain functioning. And most of the brain's function actually happens without us thinking. So if you touch a hot stove, what happens to your hand?
It burns and you pull it away.
Right? You feel it, you pull it away, but you didn't think because it's your spinal cord, which is actually the lowest level of your brain. And then you've got your brain stem. When you get hungry, are you thinking about hunger?
No, not necessarily. You're feeling it.
You're just feeling it. It just emerges because whether it's breathing or your heart rate or hunger, these natural functions, your brain stem does that without feeling. It may become feelings eventually if you ignore those signals, but those signals of pull your hand away or hunger or breath, respiration, they just happen naturally. But now we get to what you were talking about, the emotional part of the brain. And that's where your reward center and your alarm center are. And that's where emotion comes from. And that's what we're going to focus on today. The great news, though, is that you have a memory center and a frontal lobe's thinking center that you can use to notice the emotion center signals and then do something about it. Most people aren't paying attention to the emotions in their body that are coming from their brain, just trying to protect us. And we let them stick in our body, and suddenly our brain pulls out all these different files from our memory center, puts them on the billboard in our head to get us out of trouble or to keep us alert in a situation that needs a little bit more attention. Now, the brain is going to send you 5 big negative emotions. Have you seen the movie Inside Out, Lisa?
I have.
The cute little characters that are inside the little girl's head. What are those 5 big negative emotions?
Oh boy, I'm on the spot here. Disgust, anger, sadness.
If a bear shows up, a bear suddenly comes out of nowhere.
Fair, scared.
Scared, but it came out of nowhere as well, and it totally caught you off guard.
Surprise, shock.
Surprise or shock. Those are the big 5. Anger, fear, sadness, surprise. And now let's show people what disgust does in the brain. Because these 5 emotions are reactive signals to get you out of trouble. They don't want you to stay where you are. The brain is saying, hey, your future is at risk, because your brain only has one purpose: predict the future to keep you alive. And as a result, it sends these emotions. So without thinking, without engaging the frontal lobes or the memory center, that you can actually deal with a situation. So everybody at home, watch this. Watch Lisa's face. Gas station sushi.
Yeah.
Now notice, she didn't think. She immediately just made the face of disgust. And then you heard that slight utterance. Ooh. Now that's the part of emotions that most people don't realize. The alarm center in your brain is pulling one of those 5 negative emotions to get you out of a situation. If you're standing in front of a gas station cooler and you're looking at sushi, your life is in peril. Death is potentially imminent. And so the reality is it sends an emotion, disgust, that if you notice it and go, oh, that's gross, you get out of there and you're suddenly not at risk. But notice the thought that was also an utterance from Lisa. Ooh. It's because your emotion then becomes a thought. Your emotion that's reactive will then, from your memory center, without thinking, pull a thought. If you didn't listen to the emotion initially, if that billboard of disgust was not enough, it'll then put a thought. What was your thought in your head, Lisa, when I said gas station sushi?
Yuck.
Yuck. Now, if you don't listen to disgust the feeling, sorry, the emotion, and then yuck the thought, it's going to send you another emotion of disgust. And what's the next thought you'd get about gas station sushi?
No way.
No way. And then that's generally going to cause you to leave. But what happens in the emotion thought cycle is that if you don't listen to the emotion thought that your amygdala, your alarm, pulls from your memory center or sends reactively to get you out of a situation, it will then pull feelings up. So what's the most disgusting thing you ever had to eat as a child, Lisa?
Brussels sprouts.
Now, do you like Brussels sprouts today?
I do.
What's so funny is that the things that are emotionally difficult for us in our past can be turned into something lovely, like Brussels sprouts with bacon and a bit of champagne vinegar, perhaps a few shallots caramelized in there. And so notice how all you had to do was pause for a moment, just like you told our soccer player, and you could reflect and you could pull a negative memory out of your memory center, and you could know something disgusting from your past. Well, if you're looking at gas station sushi and you're not listening to the signal, the negative signal, the alarm is then going to pull that Brussels sprouts feeling of being forced to eat it as a child and send it into your gut, into your whole body to get you out of that situation. That's how extreme emotion happens, because it sends the reactive emotion, one of the big five. It sends thoughts to emphasize the reactive emotion. It repeats that cycle a couple times. You're not even thinking about it and it's happening. And then it pulls out the deep feelings of your brain, if you're not paying attention, to get you out of a situation. That's where extreme emotion comes from. But there's another side to this. There's that one positive emotion that lives in addition to the big five negative. What is that, Lisa?
Hope.
Hope is the best version of it, in my opinion. Maybe love is second, or maybe it's first. It has an H in the start of it.
Health.
Health is exactly what we want. And the what comes from that is happy. So happiness is that core emotion that we actually live for. And so tell us a story about being happy at some point in your recovery over the years.
I think when I think back to it, I'll tell you my full story in a minute, but I had to go out to California for 2 brain surgeries, and they were grueling. They were hard. The hardest thing for me was being away from my children. And at the time they were 6 and 8. And I remember coming home and the fare was so high because I had speech issues, and flying the whole way across the country and getting picked up and hitting traffic in the middle of the night. We finally come home at 2:30 in the morning, and my daughter was waiting up for me, and she was 8, and she literally ran to me, and then she yelled, "Zach, mom's home." And it was the best moment ever. And that's why I was there.
The best moment ever. Now, what's the feeling in your body right now?
Remembering it, or then?
No,
Yeah, just,
both.
I mean, I want to cry just thinking about it, because that was what all the fight was for that moment. Everything I had to do it to get home to them. And in that moment, I mean, I have a picture actually of it, because my brother had dropped us off and he took a picture, and it was just, that was it. That's everything I do is for my family and for them. And so to be able to survive and be back and feel this emotion right now, I can still feel it.
And it's real, because what we did is we took you to the ugly of Brussels sprouts. We paused for a second with a question, and we switched to the positive emotion that lives by the thousands of positive experiences in your brain. And we took happy, the emotion, and turned it to the deep feeling of joy. And it was there on your face, and you chose what to put on the billboard of your head. And the reason that you and I are here today is because you're already an expert as a survivor, but also as a person who knows what healing is. And so tell us your story, and we're going to then dig into the emotions of your personal experience as we go through the 7 tools to actually take care of our bodies and brains when we experience these strong emotions that become the deep feelings of our memory center.
I have to say, I love that you're saying that. And I don't think I've ever thought of myself as an expert in healing, but I guess for 20 years being a survivor or still sitting here, I've learned to understand myself well. So thank you for that. So my story began when I was a college senior. I was 21 years old, about to graduate from college, and I had a stroke. I had all the typical signs and symptoms. My left side went numb, headache. Went to one hospital. They sent me home. They said it was stress. Finally, at the second hospital, they diagnosed me, admitted me, and that was its own scary part for me and my parents. I did leave there with some hand issues and some wobbly and sensory issues, but I did graduate. About 4 months later, I started my first job and I had a second stroke 6 weeks into the job. Same symptoms, same outcome, except at that point, they did a bunch of tests. They diagnosed me with central nervous system vasculitis. I started treatment for that, which included prednisone, chemotherapy, and blood thinners, extremely debilitating. I lived like that for a couple of years, eventually to have a third stroke, to move home to Rhode Island to get more help from my family. Eventually, I was declared in remission of that disease, ironically on September 11th, 2001. So it's a very odd day to talk about changing emotions all in one day. From there, I was taken out of work. I was not able to work due to disability. And I tried to kind of get back to life as much normal as I could. I started volunteering, but I would still have TIAs. I would still be very tired. I would have numbness, and this would happen over the years multiple times. Fortunately, I met my husband. We grew our family to a family of 4 over the years. I was actually a spokesperson for the American Heart Association for Go Red for Women. That was in 2014, 2015. And I mentioned that because at the time, I was so excited to be able to share this story of stroke with others. 1, that I was a young woman who had a stroke. 2, what are the symptoms? What do you need to do? And 3, just that I had survived. I had gotten through 3 strokes. And I really took that as my role. And I was like, we need to share this message. Well, I started blogging. I started sharing the message. And when, I had a 4th stroke. And this was after 14 years of nothing. I shouldn't say nothing, of not having a major stroke. At this point, I was very shocked. It was March of 2015. We would do follow-up testing only to find out that I have moya disease, which is a rare brain disease. And chances are that's what I had in the past. But in the moment, it was like, okay, what do we do now? So the good news, I had a definitive diagnosis. There is no cure for the disease, but there is treatment. And over the course of the next couple of weeks, we determined I would need not 1, but 2 brain surgeries. So talking about blood flow, I would learn that my blood flow was 1/7 of what it was supposed to be. Wow. And I think back to then and how fatigued I was and how mentally at times I was confused and, just a little fuzzy. And so I look back and I see that. But we made the decision to go across the country to the expert neurosurgeon for moya disease to have these 2 brain surgeries. And as I mentioned, I had to leave my children. My husband came out, my mom came out. I lost my speech for a little while, all the typical signs and symptoms of surgeries, brain surgeries, but in the end, they were successful. I'm very, very fortunate. Let's see. So then I came back, and that was about 5 years ago now, 6 years ago. And today I'm doing well. I still have fatigue. I still have some fuzziness at times, some numbness, but they're very minor. And my outlook is good. So I'm still followed by doctors. I'm still not working, which is frustrating at times, but I'm able to be a mom. I have my 2 kids now are 15 and 13. I do a lot of volunteer work for nonprofits in town. And just try to help others, because I'm sitting here, and some days you wonder, how am I sitting here? So now I, do a lot of different things, but I think in terms of the emotional piece, I think that suffices my story for, what we're talking about today.
No, it's a profound story of repeatedly having to deal with the fear and the anxiety of the big 5. Which is the most powerful for you? Which of the 5, anger, fear, sadness, surprise, disgust, which pops up the most for you in your life?
Fair.
And that's natural. Because
Mhm.
the reality that people don't often own is that when you have these extreme emotions, it's not because you're unhealthy. It's because you're actually healthy. It's because you're actually paying attention to your body and you're seeing the stress signals that it's sending you. And when we don't pay attention, again, the alarm is going to send them deeper and deeper. And here's how that works. When you're feeling fear, even just a small trigger, a little instance that's brought on by a smell or a situation that's similar, it's going to then go back to your memory center and be in what's called the short loop. From your alarm, it's going to pull all those negative memories, and you have a ton of scary negative experiences that it can draw from, and it's going to pull those experiences and the feelings that come up with it again. That's what extreme emotion is. Here's the best news. You also have a long loop where the neural pathways of your brain are open between all the regions, frontal lobes, memory center, alarm, and emotional center. And when that's like a highway with no cars on it, you have access not only to the feeling of the negativity, the emotional pain, you can then switch in a moment or two to all the great places like we just talked about, seeing your kids after coming back from those surgeries. And you can access those things, but you actually have to know how. But what gets in the, and we're going to teach that. What gets in the way of this, however, is grief. Talk a little bit about your grief process over the years as life wasn't what you expected it to be.
I think that's something that emotionally I have dealt with a lot. And I've worked through it generally, because I am sitting here and overall, I mean, I have anxiety, I can be depressed, but I still get up every day and am mostly positive. But, I think what I had planned is not what my life, the way it went. And I think a lot of people have that, especially when it comes to illness, but it could also just be in everyday life. And for me, being taken out of work at 25 was devastating. And it's interesting. It's not that I had some specific career, some specific thing I wanted to do, but I'm that type A overachiever. I always excelled in the things I did, and I wanted to do that in life. I just assumed that's what I would do. I assumed I would go on to have a job that was meaningful and that I would make a difference and that I would, make money and I would have a certain life. And, I had this plan. And truthfully, I can look through it and I can see my life is really where it's supposed to be, but that's not without the grief. And that's not without the fact I still probably daily struggle with that. I'm consistently trying to prove myself, to make it feel like the thing that's missing in my life isn't missing. And when we talk about it, it's sad to me. And I don't talk about it that often. I journal about it. I do other things, to figure it out for myself, but it stinks. And, many people say to me, it's a job is a job. It's not necessarily what you thought it would be, but I think it's kind of the life that I had envisioned isn't what it turned out to be. But I will say,
go ahead, please.
it's pretty, I do want to say though, I mean, through therapy, through different things I do, my life is amazing. So I don't want to downplay what it is, but the grief is there for the things that might not have happened. Or
here's what people don't realize about extreme emotion. You can't get to the amazing until you've actually sat with what your body is sending you as a signal. And so the toxic positivity movement that wants us to say, everything's going to be okay, you're going to be okay, it's lying to your alarm in your brain, and it's denying the real signals that, by the way, during COVID, every single one of us is grieving. Every single one of us has lost people or a life or a job. And you have to notice and name that extreme emotion, because if you don't, the alarm system in your brain will keep sending you the grief cycle, anger and fear and denial, and you'll eventually get to resolution, but it's not going to happen quickly because, again, you're ignoring the screaming toddler that is the alarm in your brain. But here's what's so powerful about Lisa and her story. You notice that she was able to be honest about what she was suffering from. She could switch to the positive. She could switch to the beautiful. She could switch to the amazing. That's the 7 skills we're about to give you right now to teach you how to switch, because you have to notice extreme emotion first, and then you can actually switch to the things that allow you to feel relief, and slowly but surely let that emotion be something that you can sit with and not have to fix, and rather be with and allow to be a part of your whole story. First technique for today, measuring in the morning an emotion to actually know what your brain is sending you. So you said, Lisa, that fear is what comes to you most. So where is your level of fear right now? By the way, you're in a live studio audience. You're watching me talking, but really there's going to be eventually thousands of people watching this video. Where is your fear right now? 10 being absolutely deeply anxious, 1 being totally chill. I love hanging out with this guy, Jon.
I think it's interesting. I actually am probably like a 3 or 4. I do this very often and I like it. I don't mind it. I think most people would be surprised at the things that cause me alarm and the things that don't. So for this, I kind of like it. I mean, I guess the fact you kept raising the numbers of who's watching, that got me a little more nervous, but
right.
but in reality, I'm pretty good right now.
Because our emotions go up and down.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of our emotions is they spike and they recede, but they also come and go in flashes to get us either alert or out of a place of danger. And you're not in danger right now because we're just having a conversation, educating people about how powerful our brains are to both send us strong emotion, but then to do something about it. The twist is most people are not paying attention often enough to notice when the emotion hits their body or even what that emotion is. And so the first tool that we want to give you today is measure an emotion in the morning. Why would I ask people to do it in the morning, Lisa? Why is that so important?
I think because that's kind of your starting point. I mean, that's where you are. That's probably your baseline. Like, here I am, but how do I feel after a good night's sleep? And this is it. But you also wake up because you go to bed with all those thoughts and emotions in your head. So probably in the morning is when you wake up and feel them all.
That's it. Did I have a sleep that cleaned out all the negative parts of the past day? Did I sleep well or not? Because if you didn't sleep well, if your last day didn't recede into the past, if it's still sitting in your present, then unfortunately those emotions are going to come and the alarm system is going to stick you on the short loop and keep pulling them up because it wants you to pay attention to something. It's trying to keep you out of danger. And if there is something that you are afraid of that you haven't addressed, that's why it keeps the anxiety in your body. It's not because you're broken. It's because your brain is trying to get you to pay attention to something. And so when you measure in the morning, you're taking a benchmark to either know that you need to take some of the actions that we're about to teach you, in addition to measuring, or it tells you that you're okay. Now, what measurement you take depends on what emotions you struggle with. So you can do anger, fear, sadness, and those are the big 3. Surprise and disgust we normally don't feel in the morning. Surprise is something that happens when suddenly something bad comes across our phones or our emails or a bad phone call. And disgust is something that we all experience in traffic in New England. And it's not the thing you normally feel in the morning. Anger, fear, and sadness. Which one would you want to measure in the morning? Because it's the one you experience most painfully. You take a measurement and you're good. Hey, go about your day. You're not good. You start to put some of the interventions in place that we're about to talk about. Tool number 2, and the first intervention, is the art of noticing and the quick reset. So when you feel your fear come on, Lisa, do you instantly try and do something about it, or do you just sit with it?
I think I sit with it and I try to breathe because I know that helps me. And that's, again, just the experience. Sometimes it's like, okay, take a minute. Like that, for me, that works. And so, and I also, I do sit with it sometimes because I think for me, I recognize I need to feel it to move on. And I think that's what you were talking about too.
You couldn't have said it any better. If you don't actually feel the emotion in your body and realize that there's no bears, quick mental health check, Lisa, any bears around you right now?
No.
Right? If there's no bears and there's no imminent threat around us, that fear is an internal experience that's being triggered by the short loop, the alarm trying to get you to pay attention to something. And you've got to pause, sit with the emotion, and actually figure out what it's trying to tell you. Now, if you're dealing with extreme mental health challenges right now, you're going to want to do that with somebody, because if you're just paying attention to the first time to the extreme emotion in your body, it's completely overwhelming. I'm not talking about panic attacks. Panic attacks are a separate thing. You don't just sit with a panic attack. You got to get some help, because that's when your brain has overwhelmed your body because either of a chemical reaction or there really is something that needs serious attention right away. But if we're talking about a 6, 7, or 8 level of emotion, even a 9 or a 10, you can generally, if it's not a chronic issue, if it's not a medical issue, you can sit with it and you can do what are called quick resets. Again, tool number 2 is noticing and then doing exactly what Lisa advised my soccer player to do, breathe. Quick resets are breathing, pausing, pinching your fingers together. Why would pinching your fingers together work, Lisa?
Because then you have to pay attention to that and not.
You're paying attention to that. The art of noticing is saying, oh, I'm emotionally overwhelmed. The quick reset is to get you from the short loop to the long loop. Now, it's not instantly going to fix you. It doesn't instantly take away the valence of the strong emotion. The twist is you've noticed it, which means now the alarm's going, ah, I see you're paying attention. And then secondly, the pinch is a reset. It opens up the pathways of your brain. Suddenly the highway doesn't have cars on it and you can think again. The absolute gift of thinking is that it turns down emotion. When we're over emotional, when we're reactive, when we're on the short loop, that's when we can't think. Thinking is the thing we have to do in one form or another to slowly but surely turn down extreme emotion. But it doesn't work at first. You have to breathe or pause or pinch or, get this, chew on a lemon. There's a golfer on the Professional Women's Tour who chews on lemons to reset her brain because she doesn't want peanut butter and jelly. She wants something that's actually going to shock her system into waking up and paying attention. You can take a walk. You can look away from your screen, which resets your brain, and you can close your eyes. So closing your eyes actually gets rid of the triggers, turns on your default mode network where your creativity and perception of beauty is. If you close your eyes or blink just for a second, Lisa, I'm actually going to be handsome for once. And see, ladies and gentlemen, she just closed her eyes. She did it. She just told me I was gruesome. The fun part about this is these quick resets all work. And they work because when you've noticed the emotion, your alarm knows you're paying attention. And then the reset shows us that we can actually get the brain back on the long loop and we're in control again. We're not going to instantly feel better. It just means we're proving to our alarm that it can stop sending the signal and then it will recede. But that brings us to tool number 3. Sometimes the warning signs of extreme emotion get the better of us and we don't actually notice them as they're coming. First warning sign, intrusive thoughts, crazy thoughts that come into your head. Remember gas station sushi? That's the disgust becoming, ew, don't eat that. We don't always notice these thoughts, but that's the first warning sign that extreme emotion is coming. Second is reactivity, behaviors that you wouldn't normally do, yelling at your spouse, feeling agitated. Those sort of things are, again, the signs that extreme emotion is building up in your body. And then third, maladaptive coping. So those of us who have some habits, drinking, drugs, gambling, and such, that we then do in an unhealthy way, that is a sign that emotion is in your body in an extreme way and you haven't been paying attention. The quick reset gets you to the place where you can do something different. Long resets, however, are what we practice to remind ourselves that we can always wait out long emotions. Now, you have a special long reset, Lisa. Tell us about it. It has to do with beaches.
Oh, yes, I do. Sorry, I was like, I know we talked about this. So I didn't realize that this was a long reset, but there's something that I've always done, but actually more and more in my adulthood, and especially since my surgeries, I've always collected sea glass. And the beach I go to, primarily, the pieces of sea glass are minuscule. I should have had one with me to show you. I mean, they're teeny tiny and they're little pebbles. And so you really have to look. And for some reason, that's my happy place, I've said, like, that's my moment. And sometimes I'll, like during COVID, we would take a ride to the beach just so I could walk the beach and look for sea glass. And it would be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, no big deal. And come to find out, I was creating a technique that worked for me. And I think I love the sense of being at the beach, the water, the sun, but I can't think about anything else when I'm looking for sea glass. And I love that feeling. And apparently it has a name. That's what I've learned.
Meditation. Like, right. What people don't realize is that long resets are mindfulness of any form that you do for 10 minutes or more. So Amishi Jha, the University of Miami, funded by Goldie Hawn, found with Marines that mindfulness meditation for 12 minutes or more changed brain function, allowed people to recover from PTSD, allowed for emotional recovery. 10 minutes, the Germans found, was actually all you needed. So if you do anything for 10 minutes, look, listen, count, breathe, look for sea glass, listen to your favorite music. People say, can I listen to angry music? Yeah, if you're having an angry day, 10 minutes of that music that matches your alarm level is going to reset your emotional level. The twist is, studies have found that you need to do that reset daily, because you've got to actually allow for your central nervous system to calm down. And those first minutes of that long reset may be really uncomfortable. It may be, in fact, causing more anxiety or anger or sadness. And if you can learn to wait out the extreme emotion, and you may want to do it with someone else if you can't do it on your own at first. Yoga classes and meditation classes are available everywhere. The apps are available for guided meditations at no cost or low cost. You need to learn to wait out the extreme emotion. It doesn't own you. It doesn't have to be on the billboard in your head. And remember, my soccer player, she had to learn to wait out the anxiety so she wouldn't freeze. And then she did some specific activities to get out of those places where she felt broken. And that brings us to number 4 as a tool. You have to actually figure out what your triggers are. So triggers are anything that is outside your body or inside your body, something you look at or smell or hear externally, or internally, those intrusive thoughts that pop up. Could be a memory of something that has happened in the past. Could be a feeling that fills your body that reminds you of something that was bad before. Again, your alarm's doing that to keep you safe. You have to identify your triggers to actually know that they don't own you, that they don't need to stay on the billboard in your head. And for my soccer player, the trigger was success. She was deeply, deeply worried that she wasn't going to make the team. And she had to name that before we could then switch to the tools that were going to stop her from freezing. What's the trigger that's most powerful for you, Lisa? And you talked about it a little bit in your intro.
I guess it's that feeling of not working. Is that what we're talking about? Yeah. And that gets me every time. And it's something that I forever deal with. And it makes me feel less than, or it doesn't make it like I'm not enough. And so I feel like I'm always trying to prove that. And that's a hard thing. And so I definitely have some ways that I've identified it. Now I do have some ways that I can deal with it, but it's a constant journey for me. It's something that I think I will forever be kind of dealing with. But I think identifying it and knowing that is huge.
The first thing is to identify it. And you have to just be honest about the fact that this causes an emotional reaction. And how angry do you get at people when they go, oh, it's no big deal. You're such a great volunteer. You're such a great advocate for all of the people who've gone through experiences like you. You're such a survivor. Does that help, or does that almost make it worse sometimes?
I appreciate it. And I know people mean it kindly, but sometimes I'm like, oh, no, that's not what I want. I mean, it's nice. And it does make me feel good for the second, but then it's like, it's more than that. And I don't know what the solution is long-term because I don't have it, but I do know it's something that it's been 20 years and it's still something that gets me.
Which is our next 3 tools. And hopefully these are going to help you. And hopefully these are going to help folks go at home from naming the emotion and actually recognizing what that trigger is to switching. So Harvard Business School, tool number 5, realized that if you ignore strong emotion, like you're going to give a public address and you ignore the fact that you're nervous, you're going to perform badly. If you say, I'm scared or I'm nervous, you perform better. You perform best, however, when you reframe the negative into a positive, not toxically positive, into a valuable experience. So the negative experience for you that you're naming is not getting to work, not having the life that you expected, and that's caused grief. How would you reframe that experience in a way that's authentic to you?
I think I kind of did. I mean, I don't have the job, but I have amazing opportunities that I take advantage of and that are fulfilling. And my life, my husband, my children, like none of this would have been what it is if I did have a job and I wasn't sick. So I choose to look at that and appreciate what's around me, not what's missing. And I do that probably 90% of the time. There's 10%, where I don't, but I just then remind myself, hey, you're doing okay. and you're alive. So that
It's
helps.
the most beautiful thing. And we're not trying to get rid of the negative emotion. We're trying to name it and say, I wish I could work. I wish I could do things that I had planned on doing. And then you switch to the amazing life you have, and it switches the focus. If that doesn't work, pinch, look away, chew on a lemon, gums, peppermint, dark coffee also work. And then you come back to the visualization that you suggested to our soccer player of all the amazing things that are in your memory bank that you get to experience. And those reframes can be visualizations of experiences, or they can be words. So sadness becomes, I'm sad because I love. Anger because I care. Fear because I'm protecting myself. Surprise because I'm good at running away from bears. I'm fast. And disgust, I have good taste. Every single negative emotion, every single negative experience that causes deep negative feelings can be reframed. And if that doesn't work, technique number 6 is called cognitive diffusion. It comes from acceptance commitment therapy that teaches people to hold negative emotion and then move on to something that you can control or something you can do. In this case, the easiest way to deal with strong emotion when it's not working to name and reframe or recognize the triggers, or you don't have time for a long reset, the short resets aren't working, you measured your stress and it didn't do anything. Thank your alarm. Literally, say thank you to your alarm for the strong emotions. Because when you thank your alarm and say, hey, thank you for showing me that I care. Thank you for showing me that I'm at risk right now. Thank you for reminding me that I need to do my exercises to keep my body and brain healthy. It actually turns down the stress level because the alarm realizes you're paying attention. So it's a funny question to ask, Lisa, but what would you thank your alarm for when it's sending you the fear response about the future?
Thank you for letting me be here to have a future.
I'm just going to let that and the beautiful birds sit there for a minute, right? Thank you. Thank you for being so strong that you actually give me the opportunity to be alive and appreciate the things that I love. That doesn't mean you don't have grumpy days, and that doesn't mean that 10% of the time you're not absolutely frustrated by what you've had to experience. We're not trying to get rid of the negative. We're trying to use it as a springboard into all of the beauty that is also your life. But if that doesn't work, technique number 7 is a negative emotion journal. So you do journaling. What do you put in your journal? Do you have separate journals? Like, how do you do journaling to get rid of the junk in your head?
Mine is not a very advanced process. It is literally open up a journal and write. And I have told my husband, if and when I die, or when I die, take them and burn them, because none of the words are meaningful. They're not what I really think, but oh, can I get mad at him, or I can get mad at my kids, and like, but nobody should see that. It's just dumping. It's just my dumps. But I keep them because I occasionally want to look back. And I look back sometimes, I'll look in my early 20s, and they're not even real sentences. They are just like verbal vomit that just comes out and puts it all out there. And for me, it doesn't always work, of course. And you can ask my family that. Half the time I'm running around screaming, but if I have the time to do it, I am so much better off. I'm so much better off because it's like, I put it down there and it's released from me. And I tell my kids that. I'm like, write it down. And my daughter is not a writer. I'm like, paint, she's creative, or dance, or do something and get rid of it. And so sometimes, like, she has chosen one thing is dancing. She'll go down in the gym and she calls it her like emotional, you know, not all the time, but she has done it where it's her angry dance. Because I'm like, you just need to get out that emotion. And for me, it's, you know, pages and pages of babbling, but it works for me. So
bonus skill, angry dancing, in terms of getting the negative emotion out of your body. Skill number 7, tool number 7 is write down the negative emotions in a journal, close that journal, put them in a safe, put them in a drawer. This is not where you do your creative journaling or your positive journaling. This is not Dear Diary time. This is literally putting the junk somewhere where it can then disappear. It's out of your head like a pinch. It shocks your alarm like lemon. And it allows you to get out of the negative emotion place because you put it somewhere, and then you can switch back to the things you love. Again,
you know what I find? Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
excuse
please.
me a second. I find it interesting because, especially in my 20s, I can picture myself laying in my bed because I couldn't do anything else, and, you know, by myself. And I think at some point I just started writing, and I just started writing it all down. And so I think my body accidentally found that way as a release for me. And I'm still doing it years later. So it's interesting that it now has a name, but it's, for me, it was like, how am I going to survive? Like, how am I going to handle these emotions that are taking over me? And I look back after my surgeries, I had probably some PTSD of the emotions, and it would overwhelm me. And it's interesting because at times they were TIAs. You talk about panic attacks, TIAs. There were sometimes I couldn't recover. I couldn't figure out how to get out of my own way. But then there was times where I'd have this fear, and I knew it was irrational, but in the moment, it's so real. And so writing for me kind of became that dump. But again, I think it was literally something just came upon me. I needed to get it out. So I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I'm sure people have ways that help them, but I think it's so interesting to kind of put words to it and a function and explain why I've been doing that, because I never knew why I was doing it. I just did it for survival.
And you are a survivor who figured out how to journal negative emotions and how to look for sea glass and how to breathe. And all of these techniques that we've talked about today, again, a morning measurement, quick resets, noticing the warning signs and doing long resets, doing a trigger analysis, naming and reframing those negative emotions, cognitive diffusion, saying thank you to your alarm, and that negative emotion journal. Elisa, you are the example of our body and brain wanting us to get past those negative emotions. We can do it naturally. When we do it intentionally, it's so much more powerful. And our final thought for today is, if these techniques didn't work for you, if the education about where strong emotion comes from didn't fix it, borrow someone else's learning brain. So what Lisa was offering us today is her intuitive skills and her incredible experience that is about being a healer, that is about being someone who has healed and survived. The twist is there are therapists via mobile as well as virtual platforms. You don't have to go to the office. There are people all through the American Heart Association like Lisa who would love to help you and be part of your life to share their story. And this video is going to live on as something, as well as this series, that allows people to recognize you're not alone in your story and the strong emotions don't have to win. Lisa, any final words of encouragement for our folks at home?
I mean, I guess just hold on to hope. I mean, I think that's what I've always done. And each day is a new day, and make the best of it. And I don't always, but I try to. And I try to remember that in the day-to-day moments. And that would be my, advice. I think hope really helps.
And that big positive emotion, as opposed to the -5, happy. My soccer player, by doing a bunch of the things we talked about today, she found her way onto the national team for the first time in her adult career. She played as a junior, and we got to watch her on TV as a family. And it wasn't because she had extreme emotion that she was going to fail. It was because she didn't know how to deal with it. You do not have to let the negative that goes on the billboard of your head that fills your mind control the rest of your days. Lisa, thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you. I've loved this. It's awesome. Really great stuff.
We'll keep doing this. We have 5 more parts of this series coming. Meg, take it away.
Thank you, Jon and Lisa, so very much. I was just getting ready to type in the chat box. Hopefully everyone can join us for our next part of the series, taking place October 28th at 12 p.m. Our conversation topic will be energy management. It is also our Heart Challenge week, so I feel like there's definitely some synergy there. But Lisa, again, every time you share your story, I know you're impacting so many more lives and empowering people to share their own story. And Jon, just really looking forward to the rest of the series and hope everyone can continue to join us. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.